Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rat Pack meeting tonight. This meeting is going to be on using N1MM contest logger. We're going to specifically look at field day, and I'm going to do a traditional type presentation, but then I'm also going to actually bring up N1MM, go through some of the fields, answer any questions I can, and hopefully I won't sneeze too much with my hay fever. I'm Anthony Luscre, Kilo 8 Zulu Tango. By the way, it'll be 2 Bravo, West Virginia when you work me during field day. By attending today, you're required to work me. The slideshow is available at tiny.cc/N1MMFD, and that'll get you access to all the links that are in the slideshow. The links are not underscored. I hate underscores in my presentation, so the links will show up as these little serif fonts with a little icon that shows that it is a link. So N1MM is a free program that runs on Windows computers. It's contesting logging software. It also has rig interfacing and control software capability. You can also do CW and voice keying with it. And I'm going to go ahead and, okay. Another very popular option, which I'm not going to be talking about anymore tonight, other than one more slide, is N3FJP's program called ARRL Field Day Contest Logger. It's about $9, I think. And if you could mute yourself if you're not muted. Okay, there we go. And this is what the N3FJP software looks like. Again, it's a very serviceable program and a lot of very popular program. It doesn't have quite as many features, but it's sometimes a little bit easier to use. So that's another option for you to consider for field day. N1MM Plus is packed with features, and it can be very intimidating for beginners, but you don't need to know everything to use it. You use the key features that you're comfortable with, and then keep learning about additional features as you use the program over time. One of the best things I find for learning any logging software is just tune the radio up, listen to another operator who's operating, and pretend you're logging for him at your local location. That way there's no stress on you to worry about making contacts or anything, and you can learn how to use the logging software. So just pretend you're the other station and go ahead and log things. Also, you can create some little cheat sheets on your desk if you need the keyboard shortcuts in front of you or things like that. That can be very helpful. There's also a lot of videos available online for information on using N1MM. These are all links for resources. The N1MM Logger Plus website. They have a mailing list where people ask and answer questions. There's how-to videos posted on the N1MM site itself. And then there's information on supported radios. I have a website on contesting resources that has resources on not only this, but many contesting things, and also another web page on logging and QSLing. So the first thing you want to do when you're installing the program is make sure your Windows has been updated before you do that. Although there's a little warning right now, there's a sort of a troublesome update that just went out the day before yesterday, so you may not want to update Windows right now. If you want to run this and you don't have Windows, you can run it under Linux or Mac using Wine or Parallels desktops. I've not really done that, but I know other people that do that. You need to download the N1MM Plus full installer and run it. It won't be the most up-to-date version, but it'll give you the full install, and then you can do the download and run the most recent N1MM update. You can interface your radio to your computer. If you're going to do that, make sure you first take care of doing things like installing your manufacturer's software drivers before you connect cables to avoid problems. And then the next little thing was down here is for my local club. I help a lot of our local members by using Chrome Remote Desktop. I won't log into your system to do that though. So I'm having trouble getting my screen to sync. Okay, why are we not moving here? Okay, so when you do the installation, a couple tips. Watch the short video on the next slide before you do the installation. Install it into the suggested folders if at all possible. Don't try and get creative and put it in strange places because you can run into some problems. Especially, you do not want to install the program or its databases on an online drive such as OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. You can run into a lot of problems that way. So again, it's best if it's installed on a local drive. Reboot the computer after the initial installation, as it recommends, and then each update has all the files needed. So if you just do the most recent update, it'll do all the updates. And this is the little video. I'm just going to start this up. I won't play through the whole thing, but just to give you an idea what the videos are like.
This is Larry, K8ZT. Thank you for viewing my video on downloading and installing N1MM Multiplier. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to find and execute the install program, how to find and execute the latest update, finally how to tell if the installation was successful.
Can you up the audio?
Yes,
Anthony?
I will do that. Let me just take care of that real quick here. So when I do play audio, it will play a little louder. Thank you for reminding me about that. So the first time you start up the program, it's going to ask you if you want to convert an existing database, and this is the old format that they used to use, so they're assuming that you were running the old program, or create a new database, or open an existing database. So if it's the first time you're running it, you want to choose the middle option, and just click OK, and it's going to ask you to choose a name for it. Just let it choose the defaults. Once all that's up and working, then you can actually start setting up the program. And there's basically a couple things you have to do. The first thing you want to do is make sure you edit all your station information. Put your call sign, your name, your address, all that stuff in there. Now you might say, well, some of this stuff doesn't make any sense. Why do I need that in the logging program? If you do an email from within the program to send a log out, or when you create your logs to submit, it'll take some of the information from this page to use in that information that it exports. You don't need to fill everything out though. You don't need the radio, you don't need the power, but you are going to want things like your state, your section, your grid square, CQ zone, ITU zone. When you put those in, it'll automatically calculate the longitude and latitude. And if you're in a contest club, you're going to want to put that in there because it'll include it in your log when you submit it to contest sponsors, and an email address. The next thing after you set that up is you need to set up your first contest. And there's two things that N1MM lets you choose to do. One is you can use an existing database to put your new log in, or you can create a new log. And there's different people have different thoughts on that. Some people like to create a new database every time. Some people like to create a new database every couple months. Depends how much you use the program. There's really not much difference either way, but you can create a new database for the programs. Once you have it established a database, you want to create a new log in that database. And every time you start a contest, that's one new log. If you're going to be opening up the program again to run another contest that you're already doing, you might want to open a log, but in most cases when you're just starting out, you're going to be putting a new log in the database. And you'll notice here it says new log in database, and then it has some weird numbers after it. That actually tells you what the name of the database is. So you can see here when I took this screenshot, my database was 2020-11-21 because I was getting ready for the CQ Worldwide CW contest. Once you say you want to put a new log in the database, it pops up this new log for the contest, and you pick from the drop-down menu what contest you want. And you'll see this when I actually demonstrate it later. There's a giant list of contests, and they're all abbreviated, so it's helpful if you have an idea of which contest you want. It'll automatically put the start time in for the contest based on the current date and the upcoming dates of the contest. The next thing you need to do is set up the contest information sheet, the category, whether you're going to be single op, multi-op, whether you're going to use all bands or single band, your power, your modes in the contest, etc., etc. And I'll talk specifically about field day here in a second. The other thing you can do on this same screen is by clicking on the Associated Files tab, you can do things like set up the macros for keying in CW, single sideband, digital. You can also choose which SuperCheck partial log you want to use. It'll use the current one that you have installed, or you can change it. And for many contests, there's a contest history file name, and that file name basically is a list of contacts from the previous year's running of that contest with information on them. So you can do that by clicking on the change button. They have a new feature now. When you click on change, if you don't have anything there, for the more popular contest, it'll automatically download to your system the latest version of the file, so you don't have to worry about finding it. So this is showing actually picking it and setting up for field day. So we click on the little drop down, we scroll down until we find FD for field day, and then I'm going to be operating QRP. I'm going to be operating single sideband, CW, and digital, so I choose all three. Even if you're not going to be using this particular computer to do it with, if you're using multiple computers, you still want to choose all the modes on all the computers you're setting up. So this isn't necessarily the mode that that particular station's operating. And I put my exchange in here of 2 Bravo, and my operator is in here. And then for the associated files, as I mentioned earlier, you can do this call history file. When I click on the change button, you'll notice the most recent file history for field day is 2021-004, and there'll probably be another file that comes out right before field day. But what that's going to have is it's going to have the information from last year's running of the contest. So when you put my call in K8ZT and you press the space bar, it'll automatically pre-fill the exchange field and the section field with last year's exchange, which will be wrong for me, but I've gotten that corrected by sending that information to the people that keep the history files. Now, one of the things about N1MM when you use it for the first time, you can overwhelm yourself with excessive windows. Here you can see just a small sample of the windows available, and you really only want the windows that you need or that you feel comfortable using. So you don't need to open all the windows, and you can close extra windows that you don't necessarily need. And all the windows can be positioned at different places. So if you have 2 monitors, you can put some of the windows on another monitor if you'd like. We're going to go through each of the window types and talk about what it is and what it does and if you need it or not. But I'm going to suggest for a basic setup for field day, you're probably going to want these 5 windows. The entry window you're going to need for sure, and that's this main one right here. Get my mouse pointer back here again. Why did it go away? There we go. This right here is the entry window. The log window is where the information is going to be kept. You don't actually enter it there. It's going to go in there from the enter field. We have the super check partial. They call it the check, but it's the super partial check window up here. I'm using Telnet, which I won't be using during field day because I won't have a internet connection. But if you are using spotting from Telnet, you can put that there. And I have these current scores, and I have the band map showing. So these are the 5 windows I'm showing right now on the screen. If you, some other windows you might consider for field day, Telnet if you're going to be using internet spotting assistance. If you're going to be doing CW, you can pop up the little keyer window if you want. There's also, if you're using a supported decoding software, you can have that display on the screen in one of the windows. And if your computers are networked, multiple computers networked for field day setup, you can have the network status up. And if you have a second monitor, you might want to put up the multiplier screen, but there's a problem with the multipliers display for the field day, and I'll actually show you what that looks like. It's a little difficult. And again, also if you have enough space and maybe a second monitor, you might want a spectrum display if your radio supports that. So those are all optional. You don't really need to worry about any of those on that last screen unless you really want them. You can just forget about all those and simplify things. So let's talk about the entry window because this is the main starting point for everything you do with N1MM Logger. And it's divided into sections. There's information section, which is the title bar. It's telling me what frequency the radio's on, what mode the radio's in, and which VFO has been selected. The next line is the menu bar, and this is where you choose the menus that you want to go to. The next section is the call and exchange. This is where you'd actually type in the call sign of the station you're working and where you'd put their exchange in. The next little line is the CQ search and pound status buttons. whether you're in run, which would be means you're calling CQ, or whether you're in the search and pounce mode. And by choosing either one of these, that selects a different set of macros if you're using keying macros to send CW or keying macros to send voice memories. And that'll choose between two different sets. So you can have two different sets of macros for whether you're searching and pouncing or running. The macros that are available to you are listed in this area, and you can actually click on them with your mouse to activate them, or as I almost always do, is I just use the F key. So for example, when I want to send my exchange, I hit the F key to do it. I don't typically go up here and click on the button, but you could do that. The last section down here on the entry screen is messages, and this will change over time depending on what contest you're doing, and you may see things here, you may not. If you're using a history file, the first thing it'll show you is that the call history file appears to be enabled when you start up. That message will go away later on, but you might see other information pop up here. Sometimes it's error messages too. So for example, if your CW keying is not working properly, it might come up and say, I can't find a CW interface to key or something of that nature. So let's talk about the entry part of the actual entry part of the entry screen, and that's actually entering a call sign and working a station. So you type the call sign of the station into the little window right here, and you press the space bar. The space bar will move you automatically to the next field of the exchange. If the exchange involves a 599 signal report, it'll skip over that because you're not going to change that anyway. So it jumps to the first thing that you're actually going to have to type in. In this case, it would be the field day class. So this station's 2F, and then you press the space bar, you put in the section. Once they come back to you and confirm that you made a contact, you press the enter key on your keyboard, and that will take this information and put it into your log window, and that will complete that QSO. I have two sets of abbreviation lists that you can print out and put on your desk, so you don't have to memorize all those sections if you don't remember all the section abbreviations. I have one that's by operating area. This is what it looks like. It also has some extra little things on it like phonetic alphabet and a couple CW abbreviations and some common Q signals. But the main part of this is the section, so you can find those. Also, I have one that's by alphabetically sorted by the section name. So you can see that when they say Arkansas, you can see that it's AR. And when they say orange, you can put in ORG instead of OR, which is Oregon. So it's very good for someone who isn't that familiar with the sections. Now, in the entry window, when you type in a call sign, it's going to appear one of three colors. Or I'm sorry, one of four colors. It's either going to be green if it's a potential double multiplier, where there are no double multipliers in field day, so it'll never be green in field day. That you won't see that. But if, say, you're working the CQ worldwide and it was both a new country and a new zone, it would show up green. Red means it's a potential new multiplier for a single multiplier. So again, you would see that in a contest where that particular station was going to give you a multi. A blue is a potential contact. It's not a multiplier. It's just a valid contact. And gray means that it's a non-valid contact. Either A, you've already worked it and it's a dupe, or B, it doesn't fit the contest defining criteria for the contest. So let's say you're working the CQ worldwide. If it's a station in the US, it would be gray because that doesn't fit the category that you stations that would be valid for you, although you do need some in that particular contest. When you're typing in the call sign in the entry screen, if you ever want to stop what you're doing, you can simply hit the escape key and it'll revert back to where you were at before. So escape basically aborts whatever action you were taking. When you're logging, I already mentioned the space bar. I wouldn't use the tab even though it's usable. You run into problems. So use the space bar to move between the exchange elements. When you're done completing the contact, press the enter key to log that contact. Alternate W will wipe all the fields. So if you've been entering stuff in there and you never are able to work the station, you've called him 20 times and he doesn't answer, an alternate W will wipe it out, and that'll let you move on to the next section. The other thing you can do is if your radio is interfaced, if you just simply tune away from that station, it will go out of the display. It'll be left on the band map, but it won't show up in the enter window any longer. There's a couple little fancy things you can do that you may or may not be interested in. Control plus spacebar moves through each of the individual characters in the call sign. Let me show you what I mean by that, because it's actually somewhat confusing unless you actually see it. So let's say I'm typing a station in here and I have W8ABC, and his name is Bob, and he's in Texas. Okay, so when I move the spacebar, see, it moves through each of the fields. But if I do control spacebar, it moves through each of the characters. So if I just had to change one character, it'd be an easy way to change that. So if you just need to change the prefix, the number, or the suffix, you can do that by using the control enter key. And again, if you press space and then do the control enter again, it will go through these separately. So that's what control enter does. Again, you don't have to use that. You can use spacebar just to go between them, and then use your mouse or your arrow keys to go to the correct letter you want to take out. There's a whole list of keyboard shortcuts at N1MM Plus keyboard shortcuts list, and again, you can click on this link to go to that. Let's say you make a mistake. Once the call sign is in the log, you can edit it by using some shortcuts. You can also do it by using a mouse click. So Control D will delete the last QSO from the log, and it'll actually give you a little warning message before you do that, asking if you're really sure. Control Q will edit the last QSO, so you can bring up the last QSO to be edited by using that keyboard shortcut. And again, if you prefer to use your mouse instead of the keyboard shortcuts, you can do that. If you're running a field day with multiple operators, when new operators take over, if they put in Control plus O, or they type in OPON in the call sign field, it will allow them to put in their call sign, and that records the information on who was the operator at your station during that time period. So if you're having multiple people use the same login computer, use the Control O or the op-on command to put in the call sign. And let me just show you that real quick here. So if I do Control O here, it'll ask me for the operator's call sign. I can type it in. That's my call sign basically, and then it's recorded in the log that I'm the person that's working these contacts from here on until someone else changes that. You could also instead type in a command here of op on, and that'll give you the same window. So there's many ways to do everything. I don't want that to confuse you or discourage you. Think of that as extra features that if you want to use them, you can. When you press the enter key, the information goes into the log fields, and it'll show up at the bottom of the list. Eventually, as you get more and more contacts, it'll scroll off the top of the list and you won't see it any longer, but you'll keep seeing the ones at the bottom. And you'll see it in two places. You'll see the call sign in the log, and then you'll see the list of all the contacts that match the current QSO. So when you're making a contact, if they're already in the log, they'll show up in the bottom here, and I can demonstrate that real quick here. So let's say I start working K8ZT again. Because they're already in the log, you'll notice that they're showing up down here, and they show up that I made a contact with them on CW on 20 meters, and it tells me the time and everything. And when I press that, it would put the information in, and I could simply hit enter, and it would go in as a worked QSO. And now we have two QSOs, one on 40 meters, which I just worked, and the earlier one on 20 meters. And all the exchange information will always come from your previous one, unless you override it, which I did there because I actually typed something nonsensical in over that. When you want to edit, you can either use the keyboard shortcuts I talked about earlier, or you can simply use your mouse to do it. So let's say I wanted to edit this, it's not really Bob. I can right click on that, go to edit contact. I can come up here and change the exchange to what it truly was, which was Jeff for Jefferson County. And then I hit the update button, and now it will change it in my log and give me the right information for that. You can also delete a contact by right clicking on it and then choosing to delete that contact from right here. The band map, if you're using spotting, or if you put a contact in there and then not worked a person when you turn your when you tune away, they'll stay there, and you can always go back and double click on that. It will automatically change to that frequency on your radio if it's interfaced, and put that information into the log screen, into the enter screen, so you can finish the contact. The same color codes apply for double multis, single multis, and no multis, and unworkable or previously worked call signs. So in this contest, I had already worked KXAEX, so it's not valid for another contact. So the call signs can get in the band map by using Telnet or other spotting methods that you might have that flow into the band map. Or if you enter the information and make a contact, it'll show up in there. Or if you enter the information and then tune away from it, it'll leave it there so you can come back. You can set the timeout for how long things will stay on the band map, from anywhere from 0, which would mean they go away immediately, to I think it's 90 minutes. There's a whole menu that you can edit the settings on the band map. And you basically do that by right-clicking on the band map, and it brings up the whole menu for you to work through. Some of them are sticky settings where you simply click on it and it puts a little check mark in front of it, so it shows network status names. Some of them let you actually take an action like remove spots or go to the top of the band. You can also zoom in or out. You can also use your number pad to zoom in or out with this. So if I'm on this and I want to zoom, I can use my mouse. Notice I'm zooming in, see all of 40 meters. I can zoom out and watch what happens if I double click on this. Look up here at the top, you'll see the frequency. Here's the frequency up here. When I double click on this station, it automatically changes my radio's frequency to match that frequency, puts it into my log. I simply put in the rest of the information and I log that person. I'm not going to log them because it doesn't match this contest, but that's all you need to do with the band map. If you change bands, you can do it from this side here. So if I want to change the 160, I can simply click on that. I'm now on 160, 80, etc. Now what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to set this up for field day real quick here. I'm going to open up field day because I already have it set up. So I'm going to show you how you open up a log. Once I open that back up, you'll notice that now my entry screen has changed. Now I have all 3 modes with all the frequencies that are available for field day. So if I would go to any of these, it would change the band and the mode automatically. So now I'm on phone, and it didn't go quite up high enough in the band because I was already down low, but I can simply tune, and you see as I turn my knob, it also changes the frequency on there. Again, I can choose any one of the bands I want by just clicking on these. If the band you want is not on here, or a band that's there you don't want to use, you can right click on this enter window and you can come down here and choose where it says change band panel display, and you can choose which bands you want to have show up there and which modes you want to have show up there. So let's say for field day I want 6 meters also. I can choose the HF bands that I want, but I can also add 6 meters if I want. So I can choose the bands that I'm going to be working in field day, and I can exit, and now you'll see that now 6 meters has been added to that list. And there's a lot of different settings for the band map that you can change. If you are going to use Telnet, I'm not going to talk too much about Telnet today because most people don't use it for field day, but this is a way that you can suck in spots from any cluster that uses Telnet capability. Again, you can also do this from your own SDR or your own reverse beacon network feed, or however you want to do it. If you're using CW Skimmer, you can have it flow in the same way that Telnet does. The check window, aka the super check partial, allows you to type in a call sign and get hints of what station it is. So let's demonstrate that real quick here. If I start typing in a station call sign, W1A, you notice it gives me all the possible matches. And some of the matches are W1A is this call sign, RW1A. If I type in another letter, it'll show me the most likely match, which is W1AW. And it shows me a check mark that that's a valid call sign. If I put in another W, it says, hey, This isn't a valid call sign in our database, but you got to remember that database is only from regular contesters whose information gets gathered into super partial check. Field day is a good example when a lot of the people that are operating might be using their call for the first time on a contest, so they might not be in super check partial. So again, always copy what the station's doing. Use super check partial as a helpful hint, but don't rely on it to make your decisions. There's a couple windows here, and the couple windows show information based on previous call signs you made, things that are in the log. In other words, things that are in the log, things that are in the database, etc. So when we look at this, you'll see that we have different fields on this, and I have a little screen that shows this better in a moment. So it also looks at the history file, which is the one on the far right. So as I type in the call sign again, it shows either stuff that's in the log already, things that are in the master database for the super check partial, or things that are in the call history text file, and it shows you the possible matches. You can also do what's called a reverse call history lookup. If you're using call history for that particular contest, like I might do for field day, if I go back there and I simply type in the section of, let's take this out, alternate W wipes that out. I'm going to say that I heard this section in Vermont now, and I heard that I knew that their class was a B, so this shows me all the stations that are in Vermont that had a B class entry. Let's make this 2B, and we can see that possible stations. There actually are no 2Bs, so let's make this a 3A, and we can get an idea of all the 3A stations in Vermont. So by putting that information in, it tells me that it's most likely one of these based on last year's results. Again, remember, those are last year's results. Let's try the right screen here. The multiplier window, you can show, there's not much reason to show it in field day, and there's really a problem showing it in field day because here's what it looks like. It is gigantic. This is a little problem that I've been complaining about and hope they'll fix in the future. If we go down here to multipliers and choose sections, which is what we use for field day, you'll notice that it is really, really wide. Matter of fact, it's twice as wide as my screen because it has all the sections in each of the call areas separately. It doesn't let you wrap them in any way, so it's kind of useless, but it is there. For other contests, it works very well. For a state QSO party, there'd be no problem in using it. It works great, but for field day, it doesn't work very well. So that's the basics of entering the information during the contest. After the contest, you need to generate the Cabrillo file to send to the contest sponsors, although field day doesn't work quite the same way, but most contests do. And then you can also generate an ADIF file to export information from your log into your station, from your contest log into your station log, or into your, to upload it to Logbook of the World or EQSL. So it has both of those capabilities. You can also import an ADIF file. And why would you want to do that? Let's say you had one station that was using W1AW, that was using N1MM, and the other station was not using N1MM. They were simply using WSJTX because they were working FT8. You could take that ADIF file from WSJTX and import it into your N1M file and combine the two logs together that way. Before you do that, make sure you make a copy of everything and have it backed up before you import anything, because there's a chance that you could mess things up. In addition, I always make copies of, as soon as I generate my Cabrillo file and my ADIF file, I copy them onto a third source on a USB drive, or I'll email them to myself, or I'll upload them to Google Drive, depending on where I'm at, what kind of internet access I have. As soon as I'm done with the contest, before I turn the radio off, I make sure that I back both of those up. So to do it, you select the generated Cabrillo file, and I will actually show you how to do that in a moment, and I'll show you how to do an ADIF export. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. So after the contest, you go over here to File, and there's one that says Generate Cabrillo File, and when you do that, it's going to tell you, are you sure that it says the exchange that you have listed in the setup is 2B WV. Is that correct? If it is, then you'd say okay, and it will go ahead, and then it'll say what categories you have. And again, if that's not right, You say no and you go back and correct it, but if it is right, you click on yes, and that would then create your file. And there's nothing to import because we have nothing in this file. So let me open up another contest here real quick. I have data in. Okay, here's the contest that I did the other day. So when I do this now, when I generate a Cabrillo file, it'll say my exchange was AL, Ohio. Yes, that's correct. My category was single transmitter, all band, QRP. That's correct. I hit yes, and then it generates the file. It asks me for a name for it. I'm going to call this test because I don't want to overwrite the other file. Saves the file, and it asks me if I want to edit it. Even though I'm not going to make any changes, it's a good chance for me to check everything to make sure it's right. And see how it's pulling this information right here from our original log setup. When we originally set up the configuration in N1MM, the station configuration, it pulls that information from right here to bring it into your Cabrillo file. It also pulled my club from that initial configuration file. It shows all my contacts, the times, the dates, all that information, my exchange, their call sign, their exchange, their name and their state, all shows up in there. If I want to export a file, I go down to export, and most time you're going to use the ADIF file. But you can do some of these other ones if for some reason you want to play around with it with a spreadsheet or something else. You can do things like that. You can export it to that file format, and it will generate a file. Now, here's where all the information is stored. N1MM, by default, stores all of your stuff in your Documents folder of Windows in a folder called N1MM Plus. I'm sorry, Logger Plus. And all the files that you export, like the Cabrillo file and the ADIFs, are all in the Export Files section. So these are all the contests I've worked. You see the ADI file is the ADIF file, and the .log file is the Cabrillo file. So when you're submitting it to the contest sponsor, you want to submit the .log file, not the ADI file. I use the ADI file to import it into my regular logging software. Just a brief review of what you do for each new contest. Make sure N1MM is up to date. Now, every time you start it up, it's going to check to see whether it's up to date, and it'll warn you and say, do you want to update this? If you say yes, it'll do an automatic update of it, and I'd suggest you do that. Then you need to create your new contest in a database. Choose the specific contest from the drop-down menu. Read the rules to make sure you're setting up the categories and everything for a category that actually exists in the contest. Set up your power level, put in your exchange, your call sign, and all that information, and then you're all ready to go for that contest. So notice this is what the message looks like when it wants you to do an update. This is the place you do to set up a new log. Here's where you select the log, and here's where you do your contest settings. Again, then go to your associated file section, get the call history text file if there's one by name, and when you click on change, if it's there, it'll tell you this. If not, you can download it from the site, if there is one, from the N1MM site. So that's the basics of how everything works. What I'll do now is I'll do some more demonstrations and take questions. But before I do that, a couple quick things. tiny.cc/N1MMFD is the location you need for the slide presentation tonight. And for your convenience, I'll put that in the chat right now. Also, I'll put in the chat right now the link for all my presentations. This is my email address and my contact information, my website. And this is the second address I put in there. This gives you a list of all my presentations over the last 12 months. And you'll see that the list keeps getting longer and longer. And my newest one, if you're interested, is Trains in Amateur Radio. I presented it for the first time on Tuesday night, and it's at tiny.cc/AR-trains. Also, while we're on this list, I just wanted to point out that there's a whole section here on field day from the presentation I did a couple weeks ago on field day and social distancing. There's also a section on contest under the contesting section on N1MM. There's a 3-hour recording of me going into depth with setting up almost every window that you can imagine possibly use, which I wouldn't suggest for field day, but it goes into a lot more depth. And again, it's right here where it says N1MM contest software Elmering Day, and it's a 3-hour, it's a 180 slideshow and a 3-hour video that you can watch if you have insomnia. So let's go ahead and answer questions, comments, suggestions from the audience. So I'm going to leave my screen share on because I want to continue to have access to the program. But if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute and ask, or raise your hand, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. I think Dennis had his. Dennis, did you have your hand up? No, you don't. Okay.
There is a hand up though.
Yes. Yeah, whoever has, I can't see it on my screen here. Who has their hand up? Go ahead and unmute.
There's Hi, folks. So this is Joe, KB3 KGA in Maryland. And one of my questions is when you're doing field day with a club, and the club has their own special event call sign.
Yes.
How does that work with the individual operator?
Okay, so if you're operating with the club at the club location, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so what you'd want to do is all the computers that are set up would want to have the same configuration information, and you can do that by going up to the top here to configure, and then change your station data. And here you would put in the information for the club, not for your personal information. So you put the call sign in here, and the exchange, and the grid, and all that stuff. I wouldn't mess with all these other fields. You don't need to put the address or anything in there.
Right.
But that's where you'd put that. Then the second thing you have to make sure is when you set up the contest, I'm going to pretend we're doing a new contest, but I'm going to just open the one I have up already here. So let's say I chose field day. Down here under the operator, I clicked too quickly. You want this operator to be the call sign of the club, not your personal operator call sign. And you want this exchange to be the exchange of the club. So I want to make that clear that when I showed you before how to put the operator information in, that's the operator that's operating at the time, but the club call sign goes in here under operators.
All right.
Okay.
The one one gentleman who introduced our club to this program, I think he mentioned that there was a way to link the operator with either that particular list of contacts made during a particular time frame.
Yes, and that's by going up here and typing in op on when you sit down at the desk. So when you take your turn, you either type in op on, it'll let you put the information in there, or you do control O. Either one will do it. Now, the other thing you can do too, and I didn't talk about it because it's a little beyond the scope of today's talk, this can be networked. So if you have a network between all of your computers at field day, you can set it up so each of the stations are networked and you can see what's going on at the other stations. But it's a little beyond the scope of today.
What we're gonna do. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Does that answer your questions, Joe?
It answers them beautifully. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, hi. Two things. One, I don't see any links in the chat. They don't seem to be there.
Let me check
But
that. Yeah, go ahead. I'll make sure those are there again.
Okay, but the entry screen you've got for entering the contacts in is in the search and pounce mode,
Yes.
and I've noticed that if you select the run mode, where the call sign goes, it always says frequency above there, like you're supposed. I don't have a rig control software, right? So are you supposed to type in a frequency?
No, you don't have to put a frequency in. It's gonna show up your it means it's gonna show your CQ frequency over here. So it shows you on the
Oh,
band map where you're at, because you aren't going to be pulling people off the band map. When you're in the CQ mode, you're not going to be pulling people off the band map. Whereas when you're searching and pouncing, you're going to be searching through this band map, and that's where you're going to be bringing your call signs in from.
okay,
And it
gotcha.
does that because if you didn't have this set this way and you were doing search and pounce and you were calling CQ here, they would all start stacking up here because you would be typing them in. So we'd end up with things like this. So let's say I work this station. He's 2A in northern New Jersey. I work him, and then I work WY7U. He's 4A in Wyoming. Notice how that popped in automatically because he was in the call history. I press enter. Now see what's going to happen is they would all start showing up here, and you wouldn't be able to tell what was going on.
Okay.
But so when you're in run, it's going to show CQ frequency there. But if your radio is not interfaced, that's not a problem. Just remember, you have to make sure that the band is set right.
Right.
And that's the thing I can never remember to do. So for me,
Yeah.
I can't contest unless I'm interfaced, because I have screwed up so many contests in the past before the ability to do computer interfacing, because I'll change bands a lot, especially because I'm searching and pouncing. So if at all possible, if you can interface your radio, it really, really helps. And a couple things. Let's say I find a station, I'm searching and pouncing, and I find WA1W, and I really want to work them. But you know what? There's a ton of people working them right now. So if I just tune away, watch what happens. It stays there for whatever timeout I have set, and I can always just go back and double click on it and go right in there. So even if I'm not pulling in information from the Telnet cluster, the band map can be very helpful. Also, if I work someone, let's say I work someone up here. Let's see. Let's change the frequency again. So let's say I work Kilo 1, Bravo, Bravo, 1B main. Now, when I'm tuning up and down the band and I see that and I start hearing it in CW, oh, hey, there's a station, and I say to myself, nope, that's K1BB. I already worked him. I can just speed on by. I've heard part of his call and I know it's him. I don't need to listen for the whole thing because I've already worked him. So the band map is very useful. So if by any means you can interface your radio, I would really strongly suggest interfacing it. What type of radio are you going to be using with it?
Kenwood TS430.
Yeah, I don't remember what the interfacing capabilities are on that particular one. I think it might be a little early in the interfacing. Yeah, I was going to say the very next radio, the next radio out is the first time they introduced interfacing. So yeah, you can't do that.
Right.
But yeah, it is very helpful.
Thank you.
Matter of fact, when I had my Elecraft K2, I begged them for a year to come out with an interface because they didn't have an interface on the original set of modules available. And Eric or Wayne asked me, why would you want that? I said, because I contest with and I could never remember to put the band in. And they came out with one next year, so that was good. But yes, I became spoiled over the years. My first radio that did not have, that I was able to put an interface in, the Kenwood TS680, you had to add a module to it. And I remember doing that because I really wanted to be able to have that interface capability. Other questions? Brian, go ahead.
Yes, since we're talking interfacing, I'm primarily a digital user.
Yes.
And so my software needs to have the interface. So I'm trying to figure out how I can have both interfaced at the same time.
Okay. So let's talk about a couple things. Let's talk about multiple interfaces, and let's talk about using a program. So if you're going to be running WSJTX, or you're going to be running it RIDI?
WSJTX.
Okay. So with WSJTX, I have a whole separate set of instructions. Let me just bring that up here real quick. I'll get you the link for this. think this is it. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Never mind. We'll back up here one more time. Okay, one more try here. I know I have it, and it's very detailed, so I want to get this for you. There we go. Nope, that's not it either. Here we go. So this is the link you need, and I will put this in the chat. It's going to be a long link, unfortunately, but I'll put it in there. So let's talk a little bit about this. This is a little involved, but basically what it comes down to is if you want to be able to operate field day with digital. Now, first of all, are you going to be operating both digital and other modes or just digital?
If I do any single sideband, it'll be onesie twosies. That's
Okay.
it.
So for you, I would suggest a simple way. Just operate WSJTX by itself and then import it into N1MM when you're done.
Okay, I'm more concerned about my dupes.
Yep. The dupes will run JT Alert or one of the other programs, and it'll show you the dupes.
Okay, so I have to use another software. All right.
You don't have to, but I'm just saying it's easier. Now you could do it instead with N1MM, but it gets a little more confusing in the setup. You can read through this whole sheet, and you can set it up so they work together.
Okay.
But if you do that, there's a couple of things. The pros are it shows you your dupes, of course. It makes it easy to switch over to other modes, but you can't run other helper software like JT Alert.
Yeah. Well, I don't run those.
Okay, very good. So what you basically do is you have to go through this setup process in this, and it's a little detailed, but basically what happens is a couple things. You have to set up WSJTX to be in the special operating mode. So let's do that real quick here. I'll show you where that's at. And this applies whether you do it separately or whether you do them together. For field day, if you're going to run FT8, you need to go down to settings, advanced, special operating.
I'm familiar with that.
Okay, good. I'm just going to show everyone else so they see it though. Go to AWRL field day and put in your exchange, your number and your section. Okay, so you'd have to do that. I just want to make sure everyone knows that because that's something you have to do either way. So I'm going to uncheck it so I don't forget tomorrow when I start operating, because I won't be able to imagine why no one's copying me.
Been there, done that.
So yes, so that's one of the things. And then this whole thing goes through how to set up N1MM with WSJTX. So did you grab that link from the chat?
I haven't seen it show up in the chat.
You know what? Oh, for some reason my stuff is all just going to Bill. I am sorry, everyone. Let me try that again. I don't know why it's going to Bill, but it went to Bill. Let me make sure I get the other item posted there. We got both of them went out to everyone. Let me know if you guys are seeing that in the chat.
I'm seeing the one.
There's one that says https://docs.google.com.
Yep.
Okay, that's the one for this document. It's called WSJ FT8 operations for field day. And then the other one is the one to the slide presentation, N1 tiny.cc/N1MMFD.
That one shows up too.
Okay, very good. Okay, so now you have you have the links. Good. Yeah, for some reason they were just going to Bill. I'm not sure what happened here, but Bill must have asked me a question. And I see a number of people logging into the document, so I know it's working. That's very good. I like to see that. Okay, so does that answer your question then?
Yes, it does.
Very good.
I'll just create a special connection in my WSJS for just that purpose, and I'll do my other ones that I normally do.
Just go right through those instructions step by step. You got to do a couple little changes, but they're not hard. It's just a little bit involved if you're not familiar with it.
I already have a bunch of different configurations, so I can just add one more.
Good. Other questions? Joe, your hand is still up. Are you done? Did you have another question? You're muted. Okay, so I guess not. Okay. Other questions, comments? Anyone else have any suggestions or helpful hints for other people on using N1M for field day?
Anthony Dennis here.
Yes.
XDQ. Hey, listen, that's a great presentation. I've been using N1MM for, at least 10 years or more. And I just learned a couple of things from you. So I appreciate that very much. Some things that I wasn't aware of, that I wasn't using. So
Well, there's so many features that every time I do a slideshow, I learn a new feature. So I never knew about Control O until 2 days ago.
yeah,
So that was a new one for me.
that's a new
I'm
one.
not. I'm sorry. Not. I know about control space. I didn't know about control space until just
Space to do the individual
yeah,
letters.
to get to the individual letters.
Well, Control O was one I was not familiar with, but there's
Yeah.
you brought up a couple of things, and yeah, I've run a multi-op contesting station here on VHF at W60Q, and we've used N1MM there for years, and it's a great, fantastic piece of software, and for free, it's even more amazing.
And I just realized that I sent the link out to the big long 180 slide presentation. I didn't send the one out to this. So let me send the link to this is N1MM. I sent the right one. Good, I sent the right one. Okay. I was afraid I sent the one out to the really long presentation. Is there anything in the chat that someone the question here is what's the difference between N1MM and N1MM plus? N1MM is the original version. I don't know if it's even supported any longer, but it had been around for quite a while, and they deprecated it a few years ago. There's no reason not to run N1MM Plus now. And it's actually, the full name is N1MMM Logger Plus, which is impossible to say. Let's see if we have anything else in the questions here. It is free. It is free of
Anthony,
charge.
this is Tom. Dan has a question for you.
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
So at the very beginning, you said something about the recent WinLink update
Yeah.
caused a problem.
It's
Is
not,
there any
it's-
way to tell was that a live update announcement you got on the screen for N1MM Plus?
No, it's not an M1. It's a Windows 10 update that's causing problems with sound cards and other devices. So it's
okay.
affecting a lot of ham software. It's an operating. It's one of the operating add-ons 5.06. I can't remember what exactly it is, but there's been a lot of stuff on the forums today about problems with Windows updates. So I paused it for a few days on my system. There was a lot of people on WSJTX that had problems this morning. People had problems with FLDigi. People had problems with WinLink.
So there's two varieties of Win 10 out there.
Yes.
Does that apply to both of them, or just the newer one, which I've been hesitant to engage with, running it under Parallels?
I don't know for sure, but there was a couple things. Let me see if I can find one of the emails here to see what.
Well, no worries. I'll figure. I mean, I'm sure that information's out there.
And I'm hoping that now it's been long enough that maybe they've even fixed it by now.
Well, that's what I meant. On one of your screens, I don't know if it was just you captured a screen that showed how N1MM's update process works, but there was a notification that there's a update waiting for you to apply
Oh yes.
for N1MM.
Yes, and that's not a problem. That's fine. It's the Windows 10 update that's the problem.
Well, Windows itself is a problem, in my humble opinion.
Well, yes.
This point.
This has been.
Was there anything specific to N1MM Plus?
No.
Okay. That's all
No.
I was asking. So,
And occasionally there's a problem with the versions, and if you're going out to field day, I would not do an update of the operating system at the last week unless it's really necessary. If they make some change and they announce it, it's a big problem. But I would update the history text file because that will get updated until that week. And I always make sure that I have at least 2 versions of the update on a USB drive with me when I go out in the field. One of the things I do for field day is make sure I have copies of all the PDF manuals for my radios, a full installer of N1MM, the last 2 updates for N1MM, and the drivers for my radios all in one USB stick. So in case I run into a problem in the field and I have to restart things. Okay, other questions? Well, thank you, everyone. We have, I think, one more field day related talk coming up, and I just wanted to let me share a screen for one more second. I forgot to show this. If you've been following Ratpack for a while but are not familiar with a couple recent changes we did, we have now added a website for Ratpack, and we also have a YouTube page. So when you go to the links, tiny.cc/ratpack-list, it has a link to the website, and you'll now notice that we also have YouTubes posted for almost all of the videos. So you can choose to watch them on Vimeo, download them from Vimeo, or watch them on YouTube. The reason why we've added YouTube is a lot of people are requesting the ability to use the closed captioning, especially with foreign languages. So those are available in YouTube, and we have almost all of our old sessions and our most recent sessions all up on Ratpack video. And if you want to go ahead and subscribe, you'll see every time we post a new YouTube, and that'll let you know that one has become available. And then the website looks like this. Let me bring up the website here real quick. And this is the Ratpack website, and this is something that might be helpful if you have people that aren't really Ratpack members in any of the mailing list. You can share this with them. It shows the next up 4 upcoming sessions. It also has a link to the list. It also has a link to the YouTube page, and it has links to all the mailing list, all on the Ratpack webpage. So before we close up for the night, is there any more questions, comments, suggestions, complaints? Dennis is in charge of complaints, by the way.
I do have a last question, if you
Yes.
wouldn't mind.
Go ahead.
Is the N1MM Plus program compatible with a multi-PSK?
I don't know the answer on that. Does anyone else know the answer on that? I don't know, but I know if you go to the site, there's a list of the programs that it's supported for decoding. I know there's at least 2 or 3 RIDI programs that are supported, but I don't know about multi-PSK.
All right. Thank you.
And here's the link. Someone was asking me for the link for the all my slideshows, tiny.cc/K8ZT-P. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.